Morning, everybody. It is Friday, end of the week, so to speak. But just figured I'd hop in real quick and just share something that I won't say necessarily was brought to my attention this morning, but I was reminded of. And it probably goes along with some of the other stuff that I've said, and touched on recently, but hopefully I'll make a couple extra small bullet points that I haven't touched on before. I was in Galatians chapter 2 this morning, and one of the key elements of that particular chapter was Paul talking with Peter, right? Sorry. Yes. Paul recounts a confrontation that he had with Peter in Antioch. And essentially what ended up happening is Paul ended up confronting Peter because Peter wasn't really acting up to par. He was kind of bringing a law-based point of view to particular details that believers were supposed to be doing. But the thing of it is Peter was primarily an apostle sent to the Jews, and Paul to the Gentiles, and Peter in cases was telling the Gentiles that they had to do things in accordance with the law. Now, basically, the point that Paul makes is that, that's not true. That the law, while elements of it and principles of it are most certainly applicable within the Christ-based faith, we're not bound by it. The law brought death. It showed our shortcomings. It showed us what we could never be. Whereas, a relationship with God through Christ was exactly the opposite of that. It brought hope. It was meant to build up, and that these details and these things that Paul was speaking of, particularly the things that he was speaking of with circumcision and stuff, were not even applicable to Gentiles, but at the same time, they were trivial with the new covenant. They weren't things that were really important in the long run. There was no effect on your relationship with God. But with that being said, transitioning to where we are present day in the church, essentially one of the big things that Paul, conveyed to Peter, as you read through that idea, and I guess he didn't really convey it, but it was an underlying theme, was the idea of Peter acted a particular way around Jews when in the presence of Gentiles. And when Jews weren't around, he acted another way. And that's not an uncommon thing in general. That's a very human trait, to be quite honest, whether a believer or not. And not even just saying that it's a two-faced thing, but we tend to adapt very conveniently to our surroundings. And it got me thinking that, just how important as it is as believers, not only to the genuineness of our walk with God, and our relationship directly with Him, but to the example that we set, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to other believers, and, the impression that we give off to them, and more importantly, what it is that non-believers see when they're interacting with us. So it really, just encouraging us to really seek out, truth in all that we do, including being true with our actions to, what it is that we're supposed to be as Christians, and how we're supposed to allow God to change us. And I'm by no means am I putting anyone on a pedestal here. Some of us are better at it than others. We all have our shortcomings in this area. Even just the smallest things sometimes slip through. We act differently with different people. But if there are aspects of our personalities that are glaringly different in the midst of these people in comparison to when we're in the midst of this group of people, that's something that we really need to take head on and seek God for help in order to change that, because there is no half truth. You're either genuine and truthful in what you're doing, or you're false. And I guess that was just my thought process this morning, and that's just kind of what I wanted to share. And in a case like with Paul and Peter, if we're in a situation where maybe we're seeing somebody do it, not that we necessarily have to just straight up chastise them as happened here, because I think that this has been building for quite a while. But to, maybe just talk to them, ask them, what's going on, and let them know what you see. Because some people might not even be aware of it, because our human nature is just to go along with whatever's comfortable. So that's it. Let's, as every day, try to just strive to have a more genuine relationship, not only with the Lord, but with those around us, and be truthful to who it is, that we're supposed to be, not only with ourselves, but with others in Christ. And, when we recognize these shortcomings, let's take them to the Lord, ask for help, and work on them, and, work together to strive moving forward, as the church, but also individually in our walks with God every day. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you later.